Hey, you. Yeah, you. Have you ever been slapped with a series of labels by yourself or others that control how you act, think, believe, and live your life? Well, join us in Label Breaker, finding your identity in a world of labels. You will learn what your core labels are, how you can get rid of your unwanted labels, how you can change your labels, and how to create labels that you choose for yourself that will help you live in joy and the success that God has intended for you to live. So come on, let's be label breakers.
Hi guys, and welcome to episode 6 of Label Breaker, Finding Your Identity in a World of Labels. Today we are going to read chapter 4, What Are You Afraid Of? One label that many of us share is fear. I have spent many years being defined by the label of fear. Fear of the future, fear of rejection, fear of others, fear of what others think of me, fear of being alone, fear someone may actually listen to me, or fear that I'm not good enough. So how can we go about ripping off this label of fear? Is it as simple as saying, I'm no longer afraid? This label of fear no longer applies to me, and I no longer believe it. Well, yes and no. When we are dealing with things that we have let define and control our lives, it is never a simple process. It will take time and effort to make a lasting change. We will look into those steps in the next chapter. Right now, we are going to look at fear. Take a moment and think about what you are afraid of. Maybe you have some of the same fears I mentioned. Perhaps your fears are physical fears, like the fear of heights, the dark, spiders, mice, snakes, dogs, leaving your house, and the list could go on forever. Do you let these fears control you? Do they keep you from living your life to the fullest? Mine did, for many, many years. I sat on the sidelines of life watching others live, play, and do the things I longed to do, but was afraid to do because of rejection, failure, and humiliation. Sometimes I was physically afraid of getting hurt and then not being able to take care of my children and my responsibilities. I would join in only if my desire, our need, was greater than my fear, which was not very often. My fear was always greater. Fear attached itself to my other labels so completely that it eventually controlled everything concerning my life. It was stifling, depressing, and made me live on the brink of despair for far too many years. It is a very strong and forceful label that easily attaches itself over and over and over again. You may find freedom in one area, only to realize that without your consent or knowledge, it has sneakily attached itself to another area where you previously may not have had to deal with it before. However, you do not have to live in a spirit of fear. We have been given a wonderful truth to hold on to. For God has not given us a spirit of fear or timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. None of us, no matter how you believe you came into being, was created in fear, but in a spirit of power, love, and self-discipline. I had heard this truth from a very young age and had repeated it to myself often. Even so, it took me 25 years before I actually began to believe it fully in my heart, accept it, and start to live it. My hope for you is that you can also claim this truth for yourself. Believe in it and start living a life without fear and timidity. Live with power, love, and self-discipline. An example of someone who overcame some very strong labels and fears is Thomas Edison. He was labeled as addled by his teacher at a young age. Addled means confused or unable to think clearly. In today's language, we may use the word stupid instead of addled. Edison's mother learned of this and promptly removed young Thomas from public school and began to homeschool him. I believe she deserves great admiration for paying attention and putting a quick stop to Thomas's label. She lovingly supported his creativity, interest, and intellect, and allowed him to build his first science lab in his family's basement at the age of 10. In doing so, she quite possibly removed or changed the addled label before it had a lasting impact on him. Edison was also labeled as deaf, whether from scarlet fever as a baby or an accident in one of his labs. Either way, by the age of 12, he was hard of hearing. It was said that Edison actually liked being deaf. Edison actually liked being deaf because it made it easier for him to concentrate on his experiments. Thomas Edison became a prolific inventor. Despite his labels, he had 1,093 U.S. patents in his name, as well as patents in the U.K., France, and Germany. He is known as the father of the light bulb, but he had inventions involving sound recording devices, motion pictures, telegraph, telecommunications, architecture, and much more. A few famous quotes that are credited to him are, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work. Maybe you can relate better to sports than science. Let us take a moment to consider the person whom many credit as the one who started the term legend, Babe Ruth. His young life was one of difficulties. When he was young, his father ran a saloon underneath their apartment. One evening, there was a bad altercation in the saloon, and it was determined that young Ruth should no longer reside with his parents. Some accounts say his parents willingly gave him up because they did not want him. Whether by their choice or the authorities, he was sent to live at St. Mary's Industrial School for Boys. Ruth later suggested that he had been running the streets, rarely attending school, and drinking beer when his father was not looking. And this was at the ripe old age of 7. He was labeled as incorrigible once he entered St. Mary's, where he lived for the next 12 years. While there, Babe Ruth caught the attention of Brother Matthias, whom he revered. Even though Brother Matthias was in charge of making boys behave, and Ruth was known as one of the greatest misbehaviors of all time, they formed a strong bond. Brother Matthias nurtured Ruth, shaped and cultivated him, helping him to become one of the greatest ball players in history. He was a 2-time All-Star, a 7-time World Series champion, All-League batting champion, and MVP. 12-time All-League home run leader. Not to mention he was one of the first inaugural members inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. By many, Ruth is regarded as one of the greatest sports heroes in American culture and the greatest baseball player of all time. This may not have been the case if he had accepted his labels of incorrigible, worthless, unwanted, troublemaker, and loser. Thankfully, Brother Matthias helped him see and recognize within himself that those things many considered negative and undesirable could be changed and used to his advantage to become a legend in the world of baseball and sports. There is one more person whose story has personally touched me and millions of people around the world. To most in our society, just by looking at him, he would be considered to be a hindrance, a drain, and worthless. This, however, is definitely not the case. His name is Nick Vahujic. Maybe you have heard of him. If not, here's his story briefly. In 1982, he was born in Melbourne, Australia, without arms or legs. His mother had had 3 sonograms during the pregnancy, and nothing had ever shown up abnormal. When he was born, it was a total shock to the doctors and his parents. His mother could not even look at him for hours following his delivery. As you can imagine, his life was one of daily struggle, pain, and depression. Not only did he deal with the typical labels we all struggle with, but also a whole list of labels that were applied specifically to him. On his website, lifewithoutlimbs.org, he states that he questioned the purpose of his life, or if he even had a purpose. He credits his faith and belief in God and his parents' love and support for his victory over his labels and struggles. He began traveling the world, sharing his story and motivationally speaking when he was 19 years of age. To date, he has shared his story with millions of people all over the world. Quoting from the bio on his website, lifewithoutlimbs.org. Today, this dynamic young evangelist has accomplished more than most people achieve in a lifetime. He's an author, musician, actor, and his hobbies include fishing, painting, and swimming. In 2007, Nick made the long journey from Australia to Southern California, where he is the president of the international nonprofit ministry Life Without Limbs, which was established in 2005. Nick says, if God can use a man without arms and legs to be his hands and feet, then he will certainly use any willing heart. From the above 3 examples, we can see that it truly is possible to overcome our label of fear and the other labels to which fear attaches itself. As I have stated previously, I believe, as Nick does, that it is easier to do this with God's help. When we truly trust Him with our hearts, we learn that all He does for us is done in His love for us. If you choose to work on your labels without His help, it will be more difficult. As you can see from our 3 examples, you need someone who sees you and believes you are a unique and wonderful creation. There is no one better to have on your side than the one who knitted you together in love. He is always here for you, waiting for you to accept His promises over you and your identity in Him. When you open your eyes and heart to God's presence, you see that He is not the only one there for you, but has lovingly brought others into your life to physically, mentally, and emotionally lift you up. At the moment, it may not seem like those kinds of people are available to you, but don't give up. Reach out. There are others here for you. Take just a moment here to write down your fears. Be specific, but do not dwell on them. We will begin to process through them in the following chapters. I know that sounds scary. Do not be afraid. Once you are on the other side of fear, and it no longer has the power to hold you back, you will feel so free. You will realize that you have the power to soar like a beautiful eagle in love and self-discipline. See you on the next episode.